I am so happy to have this show back. Like, God, did I miss this thing. The memes are fun, Omni-Man is in MK, but this show just hits different. The wait has been long, but this premiere proved that hasn't missed a step. With intrigue, action, and with Donald somehow being alive again, this premiere, while not filled with any insane twists or turns, is a masterclass in setup, as things are changing in the wake of Mark thinking, as everyone now is depressed. Budget Kang the Conqueror is here, and I need to talk about all of it. So this is just gonna be me breaking down episode 1 of it. Last time I do that, I swear. But come on, let's talk about this thing. Now, I love the opening of this episode, as in the span of 3 minutes, our perception of what's happening changes like 6 different times. From us saying like, oh, maybe this is like a trading session between Invincible and the Immortal, only for us to go, nope, this is a real fight. Let's go, oh, is this a flash forward? Is this in the future? Then nope, Nolan's here. Holy shit, what is he doing here? Then the Immortal gets dusted. Mark and Omni-Man are just working together, and suddenly we're in the post-apocalypse. So now we're wondering, is this a dream sequence? Is this the future? All these questions are running through your mind as you try and understand what's going on. This is the show starting the season with a bang, and it immediately gets you engaged as you're wondering what the hell is going on, and you need to find out. As we're now seeing the world if Invincible joined his father, and just the horrors of that, and also helps us understand why Angstrom is gonna hate his ass forever. Also, love the dynamic between evil Omni-Man and Invincible, as they're not mustache twirling monsters like you expect from like an evil version of Mark. What this is instead is that you can very much see this being Mark, who has convinced himself that his dad is right, with his actions following that logic. Paralyzing, not killing Eve, mocking the Immortal, everything he does is monstrous, and he is casually killing civilians. But all of it is framed in his head as their own fault, that them being against him is what caused this, therefore this isn't really his fault. But all while the war crimes are happening, Omni and Mark still have that genuine father-son relationship. They're still talking about dinner. Nolan is consoling Mark after he thinks he killed Eve. All of this kind of just puts in your head that the world had to die to keep this father-son dynamic. That the thing that Mark truly lost wasn't his humanity, but his belief that he and humankind were equals. And now he sees them like his father used to, or what he thought his father believed humanity was. As we saw in the ending, that Nolan wasn't able to kill his son. That little bit of humanity has infected him, and he does still care for his son, and maybe everyone else as a whole. So for as much as he says they're nothing, he was probably trying to convince himself of that as much as he was his son. But in this version of the world, where Mark caved, Nolan was able to keep leaning into his disbelief that humanity is worthless, they're pets. But in our world, things might be a little bit more hopeful. But in this one, Mark sees humanity as pets, who need a master and are better off under his thumb than being left to their own devices. With nothing representing keeping your friends as pets better than Mark paralyzing Eve from the neck down to avoid killing her. Like he's doing this just so he can visit her on weekends. Which, Jesus Christ.
You too will die.
Sure. But you should have died at birth.
But for all this horror, all this terribleness, the cold casualness of Mark and Nolan just being juxtaposed by actual Mark's depression in the main timeline is very fun. As right now, the dude is bummed out, keeping busy and listening to Radiohead, with him saving lives but never really sticking around to actually talk to them, conveying just how distant Mark has become, while also creating a sense that he is just going through the motions. That while he may talk about saving lives, none of them really process to him, as none of it is really easing his guilt after all the people his dad killed during their fight. Which, okay. Now, as someone who hates the penitent hero shtick, or the protagonists just beating themselves up over things they couldn't control, this situation... Yeah, this one gets a complete pass from me. Mark's dad beat him with everything but his belt, killed thousands of people in front of him, with him. Within the span of 10 minutes, he found out his dad wasn't a hero but a space conqueror who also considered his wife to be a pet. Yeah, that's gonna leave anyone with some massive issues, especially when the many sources of guilt and anxiety are all wrapped up so closely together. Plus, the people that he failed are less I didn't know A would lead to Z, aka the hero did something that the villains would use to do a bad thing later. This is way more personal, and it's so much easier to imagine why Mark feels responsible for what happened. Or even if Mark knows that nothing happened was his fault. You could probably still feel the people on the train getting crushed against his body whenever he thinks back on that day, which is a level of horror that I don't think anyone can just therapy their way out of. But this isn't just the Mark crying himself to sleep hour, as we also get to deal with Mark's mom, Debbie, who is also not dealing with the situation well. While she didn't get the Caucasian being out of her like Mark did, the premiere does a great job of making us touch base with everybody who was affected by Nolan's betrayal. Debbie isn't the afterthought parental figure. She has her own complicated experiences and thoughts about what happened with Nolan. It makes for some juicy character work that I'm glad the show has the time to sit down and marinate with, as Invincible is great at a lot of things. One of its abilities is to be utterly sincere with its writing, in a way that I think a lot of superhero and just mainstream TV is getting scared of right now. They just never want us to enjoy just people being open. They just always have to throw in a quip. They have to ruin it. They have to address the sentimentality of what just happened, as that feels uncomfortable and they really just want to move on to the next thing. But here, we sit with it. We sit with what happened. We really get to relate, and even though it's uncomfortable, it feels so much realer for it. But the other thing that this show does really well is reconstructing the entire superhero genre, where rather than just stopping to poke fun of what's going on, this world accepts the bullshit of people having superpowers and then thinks about the natural consequences that come with that. But it does so without ever devolving into a Mark Mauler style edge fest where only the worst things will happen all the time. Invincible works really hard to show the heroic side of things while also not shying away from the darkness and hurt that comes with a world like this. From superheroes not knowing their own strength and hurting civilians, to really just adding into okay, if this is the situation, how will this affect everyone around them? So that makes it a must to spend time with characters like Debbie, as it really goes a long way to make the world feel fuller, that everyone is having some kind of reaction to the events that just happened, and seeing things from a more grounded perspective. From the perspective of someone that can't break the speed of sound, we're allowed to feel powerless, to feel frustrated, but also see the light at the end of the tunnel. The hope that we can get through this, not to mention showing the familial grief of what happened to the Grayson household and the difficulty of two people going through something as horrific as finding out that the patriarch of the family was a mass murderer, and how it's going to leave you to struggle to help the other person who needs it. As this is something we see with Mark and Debbie, who just want to pretend things are normal again to get out of the house, but neither is dealing with it well, but nor are they really able to properly help one another. This is why I love having Olga here, the former wife, girlfriend, possible fiance of the Red Smear, who just pops back into the story, as yeah, this is a fuller world, and she would know better than anyone what Debbie is going through. Plus, we get that immediate entry of not really knowing just how she feels about the whole Nolan situation at first. Is she here out for revenge? Is she bitter? All the answers turn out to be no, but that small moment of hanging on the knife is just enough to set you on edge till the tension dissolves with Olga comforting Debbie in what is easily her darkest hour. She can't stay long, but even being here for a night is enough to let Debbie vent in a way she couldn't around Mark, as she's afraid of only adding to his grief, something that he's afraid of doing to her. This is the difficulty of parental and child communication, and the need to have a third party involved, which if I had to make a guess what that red card was for, it's probably for some spouse family of superheroes anonymous support group, something that will let people talk about the issues only such a niche group like them could understand. I'm assuming this because I saw it happen in Spider-Man, so very much assuming that's the same deal here. Shit could be evil for all we know, but we'll see. But speaking of evil things, look, I'm joking, but I also need to be clear. Amber, she's fine. She got fucked by the writers wanting a bait and switch that would make her look smart, but instead in hindsight it made her look awful. But I, for the life of me, can't fathom why they had these two hook up again in the finale. I've said this a lot, but I haven't read the comics. I don't know what's gonna happen in this series. But even a novice like myself can tell that Eve and Mark are endgame. This show nearly had them hook up in season 1, only for Amber to swoop in as a stopgap girlfriend to buy time for the actual love interest to take their rightful place. I know it's coming. You know it's coming. So every time Amber and Mark have a scene together, while it's not bad, it does feel like filler to me. Hope they do something interesting with Amber later, but even in this episode, while we get nice moments of Amber checking in on Mark, it's only with Eve that we feel a genuine connection, and Mark allows himself to talk about what he's actually going through. Amber is his mask of normalcy. Eve is who he actually is. I pray that the story will give this woman a decent ending, as I feel like it's already screwed her over enough. Moving on from Trauma Town and the very cute scene of the bully consoling Mark over what he thought was his dad's death, but that just set him off even more, let's talk about the Maulers.
Did you? Oh yeah, I shit portals now. Didn't I mention that?
I love the scene of them trying to finagle better food out of the guard they beat up in season 1. The Maulers are perfect as superhero villains. They're comedic, they're menacing, but fully able to have just like an actual conversation with those around them. Kevin Michael Richardson kills it with these giant blue idiots, but then like always, they get broken out of jail by someone who needs them for a project, which in this case is Angstrom, but they do have their many reservations after what happened with Robot. But ultimately, they're able to get on with his little narcissistic utopia project, where he plans to download the minds of 1,000 alternate versions of himself into his own consciousness, supposedly giving him access to the greatest secrets of the multiverse to see the whole picture, which will somehow allow him to save the universe. All the universes. I mean, the dude's a pacifist, so clearly things have to go well. So honestly, I'm just okay with Angstrom. Clearly, as we discover at the end, that this is more of a villain origin story for Angstrom, so the man that we meet for most of the episode isn't really who we're gonna be dealing with, so he doesn't have to be that particularly memorable right now. I do find him interesting enough, but that partly is just how well he bounced off the Maulers, who are just excellent at doing that with anybody. But I'm more curious about his potential and the possibility of how the show will involve the multiverse than anything else. Hopefully it will be done sparingly, as we don't need any more of that extra shit. Though I did find it extremely funny how his pacifism bullshit, while not allowing him to let Invincible die, it did allow him to nuke a building, killing his alters, the Maulers, and nearly himself. I don't know if he realized what he was doing, but ye old hypocrisy is very fresh here. But it also adds the idea that this guy may have been a bit delusional from the start, as he really believed that he could create a utopia across the multiverse without killing anybody. Yet he also claimed he was willing to leave the Maulers trapped on a dead world, showing just that little bit of evil Mark's mentality, where effectively ruining someone's life is somehow morally superior than murder, even if it's for the greater good. Like at some point, dude, you really have to get off that high horse and recognize you're still robbing people of their life, with no amount of preachiness being enough to make people do what you want. So while he may not have been exactly a bad guy before this, him becoming a villain does have precedent in his actions beforehand, making him a tragic victim of his own beliefs and flaws rather than being just doomed by circumstance. Also, we got this meme. Cecil's also here, being deliciously morally gray. The dude seems genuine at first about wanting Mark to recover from what happened. Like everything that this man does, there's only just a little bit of manipulation going on here, as he does seem to want Mark to heal, yet it also seems to be just a little bit of a ploy to keep Mark under his control, as he doesn't want Mark out in the field if there's a chance he can go rogue like Omni-Man did, with him letting Mark help not when he's recovered, but when he acquiesces to following orders, showing that this is as much about submission and security than it was Mark's mental health. This kind of hits the grade that I love about Cecil, as the dude seems like he genuinely does have the world's best interest at heart, but is also okay with doing very extreme things to achieve it. So while he can be nice, you always have to take what he says with a grain of salt, or worse. Wonder if he's using sincere feelings to create a very specific outcome, keeping Invincible out of the game even when the world needs him, just to make Mark more willing to work under him than on his own, throwing the fact that Omni-Man acted on his own in Mark's face to use that fear of being like his dad to keep the emotionally devastated teenager from doing so. Cecil is fascinating, he's efficient, very curious to see how far he'll go with this in the future, but the double take I did when Donald, aka Bobby fucking Hill, showed up had me in shambles, as like, bro died.
It's been an honor, sir. Who are you talking to?
Dude was dead, so him just being here begs all the questions, as we saw the dude bleed out. So unless he's a robot copy that isn't some line of butler drones, I don't know who this is. As if it's a clone, that makes you wonder why Robot had to go to the trouble of stealing from the Maulers when he could have just stolen from Cecil. The fact that he is here is crazy to me, as there's no real reason, unless Cecil just personally attached to this guy and was going to extreme lengths to get his number 2 back. Like, the rabbit hole of dark government shit that must be going on behind the scenes, it hooks me, and I am here for it. Then just to round out the rest of the cast, we got the Guardians getting put under the Immortals' command, which I get it. Though frankly, I'm kind of shocked that they haven't just straight up gutted this team, as while decent on their own, most of them don't scream Earth's strongest. Like, what the fuck is Rex doing here? His ass feels like he would have gotten booted to the minor leagues in week 1, so it was great to watch Bulletproof just show up and put his ego in check. That has been a long time coming, and frankly, yeah, these yahoos need way more discipline if they're gonna be Earth's premier super team, with Robot still being here, and everyone has just decided to live with the extremely fucked ethical decisions he made to create a new body for himself using Rex's DNA, as he did it all to be with Monster Girl. Like, really, they said, we're just gonna move past that. It is interesting to see him deal with the fear of actually being in battle for a change, all the anxiety like, oh no, I could actually die now. While it's fun to actually see him in the suit participating, I kind of question why he's even doing that, as it feels like the smarter thing to do was for him to stay back, use his Neuralink to remotely control the robots like he used to, as he still seems capable of doing it. So if he's freezing up on the spot, it feels better for him to just take a step back and problem solved. But like everything else in the show, I'm sure this is just set up for Robot doing some heinous, unethical shit later. Probably something crazy like cutting off his sense of empathy to become a better leader, causing him to lose the ability to love the very person he went to all the trouble making this body for. Overall, I fucking loved this episode of... Okay, low-key, while cute, the slight pause every time someone was about to say Invincible annoyed the hell out of me. Like, it's cute. They're basically faking us out to the final line and actual title drop. Or rather than adding more blood, there's too much of it. It has consumed the screen, and now we're getting cracks rather than splatter. But I really hope they don't make a habit of this. Overall though, episode was fire. Loved all the character work, and while it's not the showstopper some people might have expected, this is the necessary anxious breath that the series needed to start with after everything that's happened. There's a metric ton of setup here that I'm sure is going to be paid off beautifully later, in ways you'd expect and ways that I'm sure I won't. You can't really beat the original premiere where we watch Omni-Man kill the Guardians. The show can only pull the rug out from underneath us like that once, but I'm dying to see what comes next. Though big heads up, this is my PSA. We're only getting the first half of the season this year, with the final 4 coming out early 2024. Yeah, I do think that's kinda dumb, but if that's how the show needed to happen for production reasons, I'll live with it. Though I do think this is a show that really benefited from being weekly over the course of 2 months, as the consistent hype and momentum is really what made this show such a phenomena. We'll have to wait and see how it all pans out. I'm super excited. Hopefully this doesn't kill the vibe like it did with the Attack on Titan finale. And if you haven't caught the Adam Eve special, you definitely need to go watch it, as it has easily the best fight scene in this series and just all the nightmare fuel. They really seem to be upping the animation for this season, and after the lows of what we saw in season 1, that is very much appreciated. As while the show was always a banger, some of these shots did look like they were made in Flash. Alright, tell me what you all thought about the premiere. What do you think is going to happen later in the series? What are your predictions? If you've read the comments, please be quiet. I already got spoiled about the Anissa thing, and I really want to go into this series blind. But peace out, like, share, and subscribe. Damn, is it good to have this series back.
Give me your money! Is that the come back and kick me whistle? We're safer in pairs. I don't have time for this. Help! Carjacking!
Shredded it.